Good morning. We're going to call to order the Corporate and Administrative Services Committee meeting for Thursday, November 22nd. I'd like to welcome everyone and thank you for being here. And I'd like to acknowledge that we're within the territory of the Sechelt First Nation. So first order of business is adoption of the agenda. No changes or amendments to the agenda? Thank you. Motion to adopt. Thank you. And seconded. All in favor? Thank you very much. And we have a presentation. We have two delegations this morning. So we have Andrea Watson from the Sunshine Coast Skating Club. And I'm going to have you push the button on the microphone and then pull it down so that we actually speak right into it. We're actually taping this, so it'll be clear. All right. And about 10 minutes for your presentation.
Okay. I just have a few handouts. So I'll just
okay, while you're doing that, we'll do a motion to accept the report so that it actually goes into the record. So I'd like a motion to accept the report. Thank you. First, second, all in favor? Thank you very much. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me up here as delegate today. My name is Andrea Watson. I've been on the Sunshine Coast Skating Club Board of Directors for 4 years. This is my second year as president. I've been employed by the Ministry of Justice for the past 14 years as a family law mediator.
You pull the microphone a little closer, thanks. Just pull the whole thing closer to you. Thank you.
And prior to that, I was a police officer with Vancouver Police Department. I have 2 children. My 9-year-old son has chosen soccer and basketball for his extracurricular activities, and my 11-year-old daughter is a competitive figure skater. In addition to figure skating, she's a well-rounded athlete. She is a strong swimmer. She's on the school track and basketball team. She attends ballet to complement her figure skating, and she's a gymnast. She participated in this year's circus that was at the Longhouse, and she'll be in the Nutcracker for the second year this December. I've compiled some notes as you have in front of you. I'll probably spend most of my time reading from them because I've put a lot of information into 5 minutes, so I really don't want to miss anything. So I apologize in advance for my lack of eye contact and look forward to questions after I finish. So I just wanted to give a bit of information about the Sunshine Coast Skating Club to start off, because we actually have a really great club here on the Sunshine Coast. We're a non-profit organisation, and we've been instructing skating for over 30 years. We offer 6 different programs: Can Skate, Learn to Skate, Junior Academy is our transition program, Star Skate, Learn to Train, Competitive Skate, Learn to Compete, and Adult Skate, Active for Life. We provide programs to members from age 3 to over 50. We give back to the community in many ways. We fundraise tirelessly to keep fees affordable. We provide free community events such as Try It Free, Bring a Friend, Halloween Skate, and Christmas Skate. We provide donations to the food bank, and last year we sponsored a local family in need for Christmas. As a youth non-profit organisation, we work with several grant organisations to ensure that all children, regardless of socio-economic status, can participate in organised sport by providing families with financial assistance. The Sunshine Coast Skating Club also provides the community with a cultural component with shows such as Elvis Stoico and our upcoming Patrick Chan show. These athletes and Olympic champions not only perform but provide seminars for our hockey and ice skating youth. We've had international and world Olympic skaters such as Beres Clements and Larkin Osman. Over the years, we've worked tenaciously to increase our membership. We've doubled our membership over the past 5 years to where we were 10 years ago when we had year-round ice. Ice sports are thriving on the Sunshine Coast. We have first-class, highly certified professional coaches, a functioning board, and a talented and dedicated group of skaters. We have provincial medalists in both the star and competitive stream, and we have adults who have competed internationally, one recently winning a bronze medal. I wanted to bring to everyone's attention that representatives from our club have been appearing before the SCRD Board of Delegates for the past 10 years asking that year-round ice be reinstated. Why is this necessary? Figure skating is an early specialisation sport. This means certain skills need to be acquired prior to maturation. We're also a year-round sport. We're governed by legislative bodies such as Skate Canada, the Coaching Association of Canada, who sets out long-term athlete development model, and our provincial body BC Section Rules and Regulations, to name but a few. We have 2 paid professional coaches who have employment contracts. We are extremely fortunate to have not 1 but 2 high-level coaches who have the qualifications to teach up to Olympic level. At the time our coaches agreed to relocate and teach here at the club, we had year-round ice. Since 2008, ice has been taken from the arenas at approximately the same time. In Gibsons, this happens typically the second weekend in March, and in Sechelt by the end of March, very beginning of April. Because of both sheets being lost at the same time, we cannot follow the long-term athlete development model and are not following guidelines set out by Skate Canada that our skaters train 46 to 52 weeks a year. We're doing our youth a great disservice by not affording them the same opportunities for training and progression as other communities. Every community in BC has access to year-round ice, except for the Sunshine Coast. When skaters reach the competitive level, which takes approximately 5 years from when they first begin, so they've already shown dedication, intent and promise at this point, they're no longer able to keep up with the youth that have year-round ice because they're training only half the time. Muscle memory is lost after only 2 weeks, so when skaters are without ice for months, they find themselves having to relearn what they spent the previous year learning. The only option available to our youth when we have no ice is to travel to communities that have ice. It places a huge hardship on these young skaters and a great financial hardship on families. Youth are missing school from April to June. They spend 8 hours a day travelling for just 2 hours of ice time. Our skaters missed 108 hours of school instruction in May and June this year. They miss family time and they miss the chance to participate in other extracurricular activities. They don't have the chance to be on school track teams or basketball teams, which is also a loss to the school and the community as well. Increased ice is of huge benefit to the community. We are supporting our youth's participation in healthy activities. Athletes are learning leadership, motivation, resiliency, communication, growth, tenacity, commitment and determination. All these attributes will serve them well as functioning members of society and will add to the enrichment of our community. Year-round ice brings financial benefits. Revenue from ice sports on the Sunshine Coast in 2017 was approximately $960,000, as opposed to dry floor revenue of approximately $44,000. Increasing ice allows us to keep money on the Sunshine Coast as we're not travelling to other communities purchasing ice. We can hold summer camps and development camps and increase tourism, which benefits our restaurants, retail stores and so on. The Sunshine Coast Skating Club is requesting an extended ice season that will keep ice in one arena from March until the end of June. Ice would then be reinstated in one arena at the beginning of August. We're requesting that this change commence in March 2019. We would like this to be the regular schedule moving forward. Having a regular, predictable schedule will allow the volunteers and the professional coaches to focus on scheduling, coaching, and the day-to-day running of the organisation. Having the current policy around ice allocation followed would also provide some certainty and predictability. Within the SCRD Recreation and Parks allocation policy of 2015, allocation priority is outlined in the following order: special events, SCRD public programs, youth groups, adult leagues, independent users, schools, and commercial events. Other pieces of policy that is relevant here and not being followed is quoted below and can also be found on page 10 of the aforementioned policy. The SCRD strives to attain gender equity in facility allocation in youth, figure skating being a predominantly female and year-round sport. Arenas are operated on demand of facility user groups. It has been communicated verbally and through email that spring year-round ice is required by ice user groups. All of the seasons, ice is based on demand of user groups and their ability to generate revenue equal to or greater than variable cost of operation. Ice user groups were successful in working together. The skating club and minor hockey worked together to gain extra ice in August 2017 and in April 2018, and they proved their ability to work together and they proved their ability to pay. There's also a timeline for the ice allocation process that is outlined on page 10 and not followed. So ice users are supposed to meet to discuss the spring season by the second week of January. Dry floor users are then supposed to meet the third week of January, once the demand for spring ice has already been set by the ice users. This is also not happening. We are requesting that our youth that go on competitions and represent the Sunshine Coast are in turn supported by their community and are provided with equal opportunity for training, development and advancement. What is crucial for you to understand is that our skaters require a minimum of 10 months of ice in order to succeed. They should not have to miss school to train. Community support is vital in allowing them to participate in their everyday life of school and other activities while working towards their goals and dreams. We are investing in our youth. We have no other training option when ice is taken out of both arenas at the same time. Ice sports need an ice surface. By taking 2 ice surfaces out to provide dry floor user groups with 2 additional options, leaving our youth with no other option is not acceptable. Providing one arena with ice still leaves dry floor users with one facility. The ice users do not have a preference to which arena would keep ice. As mentioned before, the extended ice season also benefits the community as it allows an increase in tourism by providing camps through the spring and summer. Thank you for your interest in my request for extended ice. It is my hope that the short time today has increased some understanding somewhat as to why it's so important to the club, the individual skater and the community as a whole. I would also like to acknowledge the work that has been done with the SCRD partnering with School District 46 to provide other options to dry floor users, and the water efficiency upgrade to our Sechelt Arena, cutting water to operate the plant by approximately 85%. It's my hope that these changes are a step in the right direction. I've also, in my handout, provided my email and a phone number as well if you have any further questions about any of the information I've shared today. Thank you.
Thank you. You did that very well. You were under 10 minutes. You've practiced. Are there any questions from any of the directors? Director Beamish.
Good morning. Thank you for your presentation. On page 1, you refer to doubled your membership over 5 years, past 5 years. What is the membership now?
So our membership now is close to 200.
200?
Yeah, and we're not actually that far behind Minor Hockey. I think Minor Hockey are around 250. Kate Turner is our registrar for the Sunchenko Skating Club and Minor Hockey. She would have the exact numbers, but she approximated that those are our numbers at this time.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Theis.
Yeah, I'm wondering if staff has sort of a cost-benefit analysis that they could share with us on the proposed changes, and whether or that's something that needs to be done in the future. Thanks.
Staff.
Thank you, Chair Seegers. There would be budget implications to such a change, and those costs would have changed as a result of the recent regulatory changes in arenas. So staff would have to prepare that analysis as there would be a financial impact. Thank you.
Would you like to see that come forward to the board?
Yeah, I think I'd like to see a cost-benefit analysis on that proposal, and then that way we can make sure that the costs get carried by the interested groups. And
would you like to make that a recommendation?
yes, I would like to
Thank
make
you.
a recommendation.
Would anybody like to second that? Thank you. All in favor? Thank you very much. I had one question on your report on page 2. You talk about current policy. So you're talking about the current SCRD policy?
Yeah, there's a 2015 SCRD Recreation and Parks Allocation Policy that, if you're not familiar with, it's actually quite well written. Like, as someone that spends quite a lot of time following policies and reading reports, it actually outlines the priority of user groups really well. It outlines the timeframes of when things are supposed to take place, and we've brought this up at several meetings. So since becoming president in April 2017, I've attended probably 10 meetings. Well, for sure 10 meetings that I could recall without going through my calendar, potentially more, where we've asked that this policy be followed, where we brought to attention that we have this policy that does make sense, and why is it not being followed, and we're not sure as to why it's not followed at this time.
Okay, so I'd like to request from staff that the directors be provided with a copy of that, because that will then also inform the budget items. Okay? Yeah, Director McMahon.
Yes, and I was going to add to Andreas's recommendation, but I'd like to see a little bit of the history of this, because I'm not familiar with the history of ice surfaces and why the practice has changed over the years. So that would be helpful.
Staff? Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Staff would clarify that there are 2 allocation policies. There's a 2011 space allocation policy that has board endorsement, and there's also a 2015 administrative policy relating to recreation and parks allocation. And if it pleases the committee, staff could bring those forward with some context.
Thank you. Any other questions from the board? Yes, Beamish. Director Beamish.
Sorry, just a question, and then I have a comment. Are the ice users eligible for the travel vouchers that are issued by the SCRD in the off-season for going back and forth to Vancouver?
Yeah, we had this. Yeah, the skaters can have. Yeah, they get a travel voucher. It's more the financial hardship of, parents missing work parents, car and driver going on the ferries, and the fact that they missed 108 school hours of instruction. I'd just like to make one more comment, if I may. Right now, we have both sheets of ice in the arenas, and dry floor user groups are still practicing and playing their sports on the Sunshine Coast. So while it's a preference that the arenas are a preference for dry floor users, they're not a necessity. Ice sports need an ice surface, so when both sheets of ice are taken out at the same time, our children cannot practice and participate on the Sunshine Coast.
If I may, just a comment that I do recall back in the 2006, 2007, when we were going through the process of arguing for the second community center and the arena, that the attractiveness of opportunities for our youth was really one of our prime objectives. And I really hate to see those opportunities, some youths marginalized in those opportunities, so I really would encourage the board to take a look at this. I, for one, support it. We have 2 rinks. Why we can't keep one in ice during the season is available, as opposed to having to use Lower Mainland facilities. I think that the opportunity of also holding summer camps, that was discussed when we were doing the looking at the facilities and the opportunities for new facilities. All those things were discussed, and they were seen to be an economic benefit. So I think that we need to review that and ensure that the people in all of the activities, all the sports activities, have equal opportunities. So just comment.
Thank you. Director Hiltz?
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the presentation. I guess I'm looking a little bit about the history and the statement that 10 years ago when we had year-round ice. Could you fill me in on a little bit about your understanding of what happened 10 years ago?
Yeah, maybe. If I may pass it over to Leslie Farr. The fact that we have a board means that we don't really, I've been on the board for 4 years. I can speak to what's happened the past 4 years, but Leslie Farr has been here for the entire time. So
that was one of my stipulations to move here, was that.
So could you come to the microphone, because it will be taping that as well. Thanks.
Thank you. So one of my stipulations to move to Gibson's, the Sunshine Coast, was to have year-round ice. Thank you, Andrea. And that was guaranteed. And that's why I moved. And for the first 2 years here, we had that. And then with the building of the second rink, things were cut in half. We were split. We lost our competitive block, our Excel Sport Academy folded, speed skating folded. It hasn't turned out to be a positive for ice sports. So we've lost our year-round ice since 2008.
So you're one of the
professional coaches.
Okay,
yes.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions by the directors? Director Lamb.
In this report here, you mentioned, or in your report, you've mentioned you have professional coaches here on the, so do they live here on the coast, or do we bring them in?
Yeah, the professional coaches are right behind us, Leslie Farr and Darrell Osman. So yeah, they're residents of the Sunshine Coast, and they're paid professional coaches. So that's one of the biggest differences between figure skating and hockey, is that our coaches aren't volunteers there, and it's very rare to have a coach at a club that can coach up to the level that ours can. The fact that we have 2 here on the Sunshine Coast is amazing. We have such high caliber of coaches and a great group of talented, dedicated skaters. And they just need a few more months in one arena year round to just really excel, and just, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director Tice?
Not so much a question as a comment. I'd like to give support to Bill, to Director Beamish's statements, and that it'd be nice to have year-round ice. That being said, I think definitely the June to August window, not having ice might be a reasonable one until we have the water situation under control. And I'm not sure as to how well insulated these arenas are either. So it'd be nice to kind of get an idea in the summertime as to how that would impact the ice and all that.
Okay, so it looks like staff could also bring some information forward with regards to water and the ice. I know that there's been work, and you actually refer to it in your package. It's been work done at the Sunshine Coast Arena, reduces the water usage by 85%, recycling, etc.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, that's correct. For plant cooling, water has been reduced by that amount. The energy and water considerations would form part of the cost-benefit analysis. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions by the directors? All right. Thank you very much for bringing this to our attention. And we'll be looking to staff to bring forward more information, and we will be discussing it at budget time.
Okay.
We appreciate it.
May I just ask one more question?
Sure.
This is someone that's not very familiar with the process. Typically, is there a time frame that's attached to this, or?
Okay, staff? What time? I think you're looking for when we're going to get more information?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you, Chair. Staff understand the planning cycle for ICE user groups and the request that's been made. This would be a budget item, and so would have to form part of the budget process, and so that would be thinking into the early part of 2019.
Okay, so I think with regards to the information, is it possible to get the information pulled together and received by the directors earlier than that, so that we can do some prep ahead of time prior to budget?
Yes, Chair.
Thank you. Okay.
Thank you very much, sir.
Did you have a question, Director Julius?
Yes, I was just wondering, thank you, Madam Chair. I was just wondering, like, during your dry season, what sort of things do you have your skaters doing during the dry months?
There's not much. They need their ice surface to actually train. So skaters they've had to go into Vancouver. So my daughter personally, I had to send her away for the month of July last year, where she stayed with another family.
So no dry training whatsoever for your skaters?
There's dry training that helps them as an athlete in terms of power and all of those things. But in order to, the jumps that they're doing, some of them are doing triple jumps at this point.
Okay.
So
yeah, I'm just asking this question just to make sure, because I know, like, with the water issue that was brought up, and everybody knows we have this water issue, and it's going to be, in my mind, it's going to be years before it's sorted out. So I just want to make sure that you guys, and like from the time this drought started, I was just wondering what sort of, you spoke about your numbers dropping. So from the time this drought started, I was just wondering what big of a number that was.
So our numbers dropped because we didn't have year-round ice.
Yes.
So our skaters get to a certain level, and we've got skaters in the competitive stream right now, and it's highly competitive. And every other community except for the Sunshine Coast has year-round ice. So our skaters are skating half the time, so they can't keep up. So they get discouraged, or they leave the coast and go to other clubs so we get to a certain point of rebuild, and then we lose those top skaters all over again, and we have to rebuild. So that's the issue. So we don't actually have an alternative to ice surface.
Okay, I support it.
Yeah.
Anything for our kids on the Sunshine Coast here, I will support. But I just want to make sure that you don't lose any more numbers, because with this drought that we have, it could be, I don't know how much longer. And I just want to make sure that you folks don't lose any more youth.
Right. I think, even the request to have ice from March until the end of June at least allows them to train and not miss instructional hours at school. Worst case scenario, if we don't necessarily have it year-round at this point, we can do whatever we can where they're not missing school and other things to maybe travel into the city. Ideally, it would be great to have it here on our doorstep 12 months a year for the added tourism and all of the other things already mentioned. But it would be a huge step forward, just even to give them the opportunity when school's still in, from March to the end of June.
Okay. Well, I just want to finish off by saying to you all, keep up the great work. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And thank you so much for listening today and for your time. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. Thank you for the package. Our next presentation is by our General Manager, Corporate Services, and our Chief Financial Officer, Tina Perot. And I think we need to move up here, correct?
Yeah, I'm not going to turn it on until you've had an opportunity
Okay.
to
Okay. Now, we had talked about having questions through the presentation. So that will be a little difficult to manage if we're not sitting here. But we'll sort it out.
Thank you. So today's presentation is to focus a little bit of a financial overview of regional districts. And this is meant more for an orientation as we lead into our year-end audit process. So that's one of the reports that you'll be seeing today, as well as the budget process that's going to be upcoming. So it gives you a little bit of background as far as how regional districts operate, some differences of between regional districts and municipalities, because I think that's very important to understand. So the types of things we're going to go over today is just a little bit about the differences, service delivery models, a little bit of the financial positions to give you some context of where the regional district stands financially. We'll also talk a little bit about our processes, etc., and then we'll take some questions. As Chair Seegers said, we can take some of the questions you have as they come up, because the presentation is 31 slides long, so to wait to the end might be a little much. So again, some of this information you've seen before. So if we go to the next slide, just really what the role of the regional district is. And I think it's important to understand what we do, what we don't do, and again, just the governance structure and how it is quite different than a municipality as well from the financial standpoint. So again, in the next slide too, talking about the voting structure. So you have been taught some of what the rural areas would participate in, how you would make some voting decisions as budget decisions come forward. So this type of information is very important as we move through the budgeting process. So understanding what services you participate in, et cetera, is going to be important on how we move forward. So from the service delivery model of a regional district, it's important to understand that only those properties in a service pay for the service. So often staff will get a call about why is my taxes so high, I don't receive water. Well, it's always very important to explain to those constituents that actually you don't pay for water if you don't receive it. So those are types of questions that we often answer at the front desk or in the finance area. So also when you look at your service listing grids, you'll see that services can be delivered in multiple forms. We can have a statutory bylaw, so we have an agreed upon mechanism with who participates in the service. We can also deliver services through agreements. So the Sechelt Public Library would be a good example where we do not have a library service. We have multiple library services, and we all pay per agreement to that particular service. So we'll be talking more about that during the budget process. So also one of the things that we talked about through orientation was that the regional district is not a taxing authority. The surveyor of taxes is the one who actually administers taxes. We requisition municipalities for their share of the tax portion. So that's one of the differences we'll talk about a little bit later. Next slide. So types of service delivery that we have. So we have regional services that are within the mandate of the Local Government Act. So that's the regional district regional services, so solid waste, emergency services, and 911. We also talked a little bit about waste or not diversion program, but the wastewater treatment facilities is also, if we take those on, then we're mandated to continue to operate them. So that's another part of the Local Government Act that sort of mandates those types of things we do. Then you're going to have local service areas. So that's where you might have 2 or 3 participants of the regional districts participating in a service. So one of the examples here at the regional district is water, refuse collection, which is just the rural areas get refuse collection here, except Area A actually. So fire protection, we have 4 fire departments here at the regional district that we're responsible for. And also for those wastewater facilities. So those are very community-based or very localized. We also have examples of discretionary local services. So this would be recreations, libraries, street lighting, and that's where, there's a request for a service. So we can go to the next one. So how is a service established? So, how do we create some of these services, or how have these services been created? So some of them are through what you'll hear the term letters patent. So there were things that we took over when we were established through the provincial entity back in 1967. And then there are things where through the years there has been a request from the community to take over a service. So the example I've used is we want a new pool or a local service. The idea is raised. So we do a feasibility study. So what is the feasibility for us to take that on? There's a public engagement process, and then there has to be a public consent process either through a referendum or an alternative approval process. So a recent example of taking on a local service would be one of our wastewater facilities, where we actually went to, I think it was a petition process actually for one of our wastewater facilities. So that would be a recent example, or through the recent library service up in Area A would be another recent one that we've taken on. And then, of course, it comes through the board for adoption, for bylaw creation. This really gives us the legislative authority to collect fees, revenues, however we've articulated that in the bylaw and decided to do that, and that's part of the feasibility study to give us the authority to collect those types of fees. So differences between a regional district and municipality, and I've even come to past councils, so I will put it out there, to speak to councils about the difference between regional districts and municipalities, because sometimes I think there's not a clear understanding of the differences. So again, we've talked about how each budget is independent, and again, what's really important to understand with that is that funding envelope is closed, meaning we can't really transfer funds within our general fund. So that is a fundamental difference with regional district. With municipalities, it's a little more flexible. They can transfer funds among services. So when we talk about our surpluses, we talk about the surplus just within that service. We might have a cumulative surplus, but again, we can't take a surplus from one other function and then transfer it over to another function. So that really is a fundamental difference. Again, just really putting on that we aren't the regional district, we aren't the taxing authority. We do collect user fees though, so our water bills, we do send those out and collect them. So that's an area where we do focus on those types of things. We aren't required to do an annual report, so I don't know if that's been provided to you yet. It's here where under the community charter, municipalities have to create an annual report. Regional districts actually don't have to, but it is a best practice. So the Sunshine Coast Regional District has been producing an annual report for several years, and actually it's won several financial awards. So I think we're pretty proud of that. So we want to continue to provide that information to the public. And also, one of the last things I just wanted to highlight, which is the permissive tax exemption process. So that's one of the real differences between regional districts and municipalities. Municipalities have the authority to grant permissive tax exemptions and report publicly on them. So you'll see in the newspaper where they will list all their exemptions, and there's timelines associated with that through the community charter. Through a regional district, permissive tax exemptions are generally approved through BC assessment as outlined by the Rural Tax Act. It doesn't mean that regional districts can't provide permissive tax exemptions through bylaw, but it's not something that you will see as pervasive as you would, because the Tax Act sort of outlines, the same type of permissives that you'd see in a municipality, your church, your recreational facilities, camps, those types of things. Things that have a benefit to the community as a whole are generally provided tax exemptions, and those are outlined in the Tax Act.
Are taxpayers of the regional district able to defer their taxes like they can in municipalities?
Yes, they may. And they do that through the surveyor of taxes. And so we do not take on that debt, and that is most certainly a difference between regional districts and municipalities.
No, municipalities don't take the debt on either. They get it paid by the province.
Okay, thank you.
Director Hiltz.
Yeah, I got a question on the publication of the exemptions. So is there a reporting structure that actually tells what properties are exempt in the regional district, and is that publicly made?
Staff?
No. Could it be possible to find it? Yes, with a good amount of work. It would be, yeah, a substantive amount of work. But, I mean, that's some of the benefits, is that we don't take that on. Are there multiple? Yes.
Follow-up?
Yeah, the question is about the accountability of the public knowing what properties, for example, the camps, and sometimes property is transferred from camps or sold, and whether those tax exemptions follow the properties or whether they're actually disclosed as being changed.
It depends what type of exemption is granted. So, for example, a farm status, some people get partial farm status in some of the rural areas in the regional district, and they have to apply for that annually. So it would probably apply just depending on what type of exemption they're getting. It is reviewed annually through BC Assessment. So the recreational class, which is kind of that, those are reviewed regularly.
Any other questions? Thank you.
That staff have been asked before is the tax rates. So regional district tax rates are set by the province, and we'll talk a little bit about that as well. So that is the difference. And in a municipality, generally they have a mill rate, a tax rate is set for everyone. So whether or not it's business class or whatnot, the municipality has more authority or autonomy to set those particular rates. And I have another slide coming forward that kind of shows you what those are. You don't have to go there yet, quite yet. No, back to the other slide. And then for the tax basis is that how taxes are apportioned amongst various services of the regional district are going to become of interest as we go through the budgeting process. So typically, taxpayers are taxed on the basis of property assessment. It can be any combination of land and improvements, or just improvements depending on the service. So what I mean by just bare land and improvements. So we may not charge someone, or I'm going to use a great example, community recreation. We do not charge you community recreation parcel tax if you just have bare land. Because when that service was established, we thought if you're not someone who's living on here, you can't enjoy that particular service. So that would be an example where they are not charged the parcel tax if they just own bare land. So next slide. So are there any questions of this before I move on into more of the financial? So I'm just going to go over, I know this is very small, and this information can be found in our annual report. So these are our financial statements just summarized over a 5-year period. But what I wanted to highlight, and the other opportunity that you're going to have is in April when our financial statements come to the board for approval, we typically have our auditor review some of the financial statements and give some information kind of high level. So what I wanted to really highlight is the very bottom number where you see accumulated surplus. You know, one of the clear things that public sector accounting, this is not to say that we have at the end of 2017 $133 million sitting in a bank account. Yeah. One of the things that you may be used to is shareholders' equity and those types of things. That's not the equivalent. So if you have any financial background, it's not that equivalent. This is for public sector accounting standards, and it takes into account all our financial assets, so including our tangible capital assets. And when you look at our tangible capital assets, those are the book value. So that means the value of the assets as acquired at the time they were purchased. So when we talk about the asset management and the replacement costs, we understand that when we purchase something in 1970, we can no longer purchase that same thing for the $1970. So we will be talking about the replacement costs. So this is for financial statement purposes, and when we talk about asset management or replacement or capital plans, it's about the replacement costs. Any other questions there without, yeah, oh, I see a few hands. Tangible capital assets. So those are assets that are in use to provide service. Oh, fantastic. So this is a great opportunity to talk about what the regional district does not do. The regional district does not provide roads or is not responsible for roads. That is where the Ministry of Transportation, and that is a fundamental difference between a regional district and a municipality is when people incorporate, they will then have to take care of the road infrastructure in that particular jurisdiction. So that is the difference, and again, so those are some of the considerations, as you're reviewing, development in an area. That's some of the collaboration when doing a development is a developer has to go through the Ministry of Transportation to get that road infrastructure if that is what's required for that development.
Okay. So the question, I think, is what are tangible capital assets then?
Tangible capital assets are things like our underground infrastructure for our water. It would be our water treatment plant. It would be our community recreation facilities, our parks fields, our parks halls. They are assets that are in use to provide a service that the regional district owns.
Okay, Director Ties.
Could you give me a couple of examples of the portfolio investments and accounts receivable?
So portfolio investments are cash. So depending on the time of when the financial statements are done, typically they're done, of course, in December. So it will include the remaining tax requisition funds, including our reserves. It'll also include our parkland acquisition funds. And I think today we have it on the agenda. But again, you'll receive that information through various quarterly reports. We do provide what we have in these particular funds on a quarterly basis, and we do provide it at budget. Accounts receivable would be things like we may have grant funds that we have submitted a claim to the grantor that we haven't received at the time of producing the statements. They are also for user fees that we haven't collected yet. So that's typically what you'll see in accounts receivable.
Director Ties? Mm-hmm.
Are they actually, the investments, are they actually invested in something, or is it just cash?
No, they are invested as outlined within the parameters. So we have an investment policy, and we'll talk a little bit more about that over budget and the coming meetings. And because local governments can only invest in certain types of things like they have to be secure. So our policy outlines that. We can't be investing in Apple stocks, so you can have comfort in that, or not.
There also be varying lengths of time depending on when the funds are required for the operations. So some will be short-term, some will be more longer-term. Yes, other question?
And one more question was, what are the terms on the debt for municipalities, or are we just co-signers on those?
Okay.
So our member municipality debt comes through the board for approval, and it really, each debt issuance or debenture will be different. So it might have different terms, it might be for different amounts, etc. But all the debt is issued through the Municipal Finance Authority, and so it's all the same debt, whether it be regional district debt or not. This is long-term debt, though. You have to understand it's not any short-term debt. These are debentures through the Municipal Finance Authority. So when it comes to you for approval, it will tell you what the project is for as well, and the term of the particular debt.
Okay, so follow-up a question on that. So anything that we do at District of Sechelt, for example, that's 5 years or less, will not come here and will not be included in here?
Correct.
Okay, so for the District of Sechelt, I can give you examples of what that is. It's our Water Resource Center. It's the Justice Building. Those would be the two biggest ones right now that are coming, that are being held. Okay, thank you. Okay. Director Beamish was next. Thanks.
Are the cash and equivalents, or the, trying to see where the gas tax funds would lie. Are they in this chart or are they elsewhere?
Yep. They're actually in the liabilities. It's deferred revenue.
Okay.
Yeah, it's in other, actually. And really, it's there because there's a future commitment to use those particular funds. So the gas tax specify what they can be used for. They're somewhat restricted funds. They aren't. So when they're unrestricted, they would kind of be in that asset class, and if they're restricted, they would be in that because we have a future obligation to use those in a certain manner. And if we don't use them in that manner, then potentially we have to pay them back. So that's why they're not in the asset class, they're in that liability class.
Okay.
So that's a good
Director
question.
McMahon?
I was just curious, do we, if you're arranging borrowing on behalf of Sechelt, do you charge them an administrative fee for doing it?
Yeah, so that's a good question, because through the community charter, it stipulates that the municipalities have to fit within a debt ratio, and they have to prove that they meet that debt ratio in order to be able to execute that particular debt. It's actually 25% of their financial status. So they have to show that they have enough assets to cover that liability within that ratio, or else they are no longer approved. So I know, for instance, the town of Gibsons at last, they were somewhere in the neighborhood of about 15%. I can't recall. We haven't had any recent debt with the District of Sechelt, so I would have to check what their ratio is. But yeah. We don't charge them an administrative fee. No, we do
Typically,
not.
it's the district that arranges it, and then it comes here. Is that not correct? You
Correct.
don't actually do the arrangement.
Correct.
Any other questions, directors? All right, let's move on.
So just to show sort of an outline of the capital expenditures over the years, and I think that what's very interesting, why I show this particular one is to show you that these are the actual expenditures, they're not the budgeted ones. So when you come up for the budget and when you see the carry forwards, we have some large projects that haven't been executed yet through the water infrastructure. So last year was one of the years that we had some of the highest capital expenditures on our budget books since the construction of the recreation facilities. So this just shows the actual dollars that were actually spent in those particular years in those services. Move to the next one.
Okay. Director McMahon?
Protective services, there was the new fire truck largely, was it not, for Gibsons?
Yes, and again, that'll show in the 2018, because we actually didn't receive that particular fire truck until January, I think is when we accepted that one. So you'll see that for 2018. Beautiful
Thank
truck.
you. That was my question, too. Director Pratt?
General government 2015-2016 is like double the amounts of other years around it. Is there a particular reason why?
I'd have to double check that. That includes some support services as well. So I believe that is when we were doing our software purchasing.
Director Beamish?
Public health, are we not investing in public health, or is there interchange?
Public health, the only public health service that we have is for the Pender Harbor Health Clinic. So that's a unique item within our specific regional district.
Director Hiltz?
Functions versus services. The language seems to be variable.
So services, I think I can only speak for myself. So services for me might be a bundle of services or types of services. So protective services would be all the fire departments, 911, emergency preparedness. So that's sort of a bundle of services. Function is the specific service. So the function, so we have, you're going to start to see numbers associated with a function number. And that is associated with a specific bylaw. And that's the number that the regional district has associated to it. It's not the bylaw number, because they often won't be the same. But the function number is to say it's for this funding envelope. So function 615 is community recreation.
Okay, so, and to take your example, protective services could be the service, and the Gibson's Fire Department would be a function.
Correct.
Roberts Creek Fire Department would be a function underneath protective services.
Right.
Okay?
Yes.
Director Julius.
Yes, you said 615. Is that just for recreation or recreation and culture?
Just community recreation. So just like Director Seegers just explained, when we talk about recreation and culture, that's function 615, but it also includes the public library, or the Gibsons and District Public Library, which is function 640.
Yes, another question?
Where would the borrowing for the water meters sit when it comes to all this?
So are we talking about phase 3 metering?
We're sending something up to the community that get permission to borrow $5 million.
That failed this year, so we're going to be talking about that during pre-budget. Yeah, so we are not borrowing.
Any other questions? Next slide, thank you.
So this one I showed during the orientation last week, so it just really shows just a snapshot of the replacement costs. So that's what I was talking about, the historical costs versus the replacement costs. Again, these are 2013 dollars, so in 2019 we're going to be reviewing the corporate asset management policy to bring forward and update these values because they've changed considerably. So again, one of the things we didn't show is, did you have a question?
Yeah, I have a question on that. So I noticed in the second column, required investment to clear backlog. So there we're indicating 14.9 million as basically that would be depreciation, or we've written off that, and we don't have that. How are we as a regional district actually addressing that?
So depending on what service you're speaking of or what function you're speaking of. So for the community recreation facilities, we have brought that forward to the committee for consideration. However, there was a decision to not fully fund the required investment to clear the backlog. What backlog means is deferred capital maintenance. So you should have replaced something in 2010, but you didn't. And so that's your backlog. So we have a lot of work to do here, and I think that's probably why I keep bringing it back, is because you're going to be hearing more about this. If it relates to the fire departments, we're talking about the wastewater facilities that we just brought last week. This is not unique to the regional district. This is Canada-wide. So I say that because we have infrastructure deficit, and this, at that particular snapshot in time, was the infrastructure deficit is another term that we could use.
Yes.
Yeah.
So if we're looking at the water at $6.1 million, is that for current infrastructure? It's not looking at new infrastructure, it's current. Is that correct?
It is current infrastructure. Yes, correct. It's for, and that's a good clarification. So it would be only infrastructure that you currently have in the ground or up above, or yes. So it doesn't talk about future state, so future requirements.
So another piece of this is for the asset management. We're actually getting clearer pictures on what some of these numbers are. Some of them probably are still estimates at this point, but as we get more information on the status and the quality of our infrastructure, it will inform these numbers and give us better numbers.
Correct. And so if we go to the next slide, if I may. So this is where the asset management roadmap is really kind of the roadmap that we have endorsed to go through our asset management. And so you'll see that one of the critical items to do is to find out the condition of our assets at that particular time. But what's important to also understand is what are the future requirements going to be. So I think that's where you're also headed is we also have to understand what do we need to consider going forward. We have a certain cluster of assets, but we also, are we going to be expanding service, et cetera. So that's where we get into service level decisions. So,
Director Julius, you had a question?
Yes, back to the SCRD assets page. I was wondering, those are 2013 numbers. What would it look like today?
Right. So that's what we're going to be working on in 2019. Is these are really based on the tangible capital asset work that was done back in 2009. So it was using those values. Now, what we actually know from a market condition perspective over the last couple of years, we've seen significant escalations in certain segments of sectors. So asphalt, for instance, has skyrocketed. Construction values have almost doubled from what I understand. So I know most local governments are receiving higher than expected tender value. The values coming back for contracts are coming back much higher than we would have anticipated, even when we've done our due diligence and we've got our Class B estimates, you know. So again, this is what we do need to do in 2019 is to find out what these replacement costs are.
Any other questions, directors? Thank you.
So what this particular shows you is really where we have a good knowledge here at the regional district. If you go to the next one, this is where we have some knowledge in some services. And then the next one is where we need to focus more of our attention. So you'll see that where we need some more attention is in our asset condition. So when we take a look at the backlog for water, it's really just based on an estimate. So we need to do more work, as we've done for the wastewater facilities, to look specifically and get engineering studies, those types of things. We've done a lot of condition assessments through contract, et cetera, as well.
I know previously we had a staff member who was responsible for asset management. Do we still have staff who this is their primary objective?
Yes. We have one staff to do that.
Okay, thank you.
Currently.
Director Beamish?
Under risk evaluation, you guys see an annual risk report, which is where we are with high, medium, low in terms of risk for different assets?
We're just starting to do that. So that would be another area where we have more work to do. So it's sorry, you can't see the bottom there. That's where we need, the purple shows you where we need to do some more work. And I think that what we're trying to do too, even from a risk perspective, is why did we choose the wastewater facilities to focus that much attention and resources in? Because we knew it was a risk for the organization. So again, when we even pick the asset classes, we're deciding from a risk perspective which one we should focus on.
Follow up?
If I may, I think that's probably an important decision-making criteria for the board as well, as understanding risk.
That's right. We're going to be talking more about that when we go to pre-budget. So how do we use more risk-based modeling when making decisions, and how do we bring that to the board for consideration?
Any other questions on this, directors? Julius?
I was just wondering, how is that data accessibility going to look? To me, because to me, it's data accessibility. At least it sounds like to me about how I can access information from the Sunshine Coast Regional District. And for somebody like me, I need it in layman's terms.
I think that's where what we're trying to do is right now we have a very large corporate asset management plan. So what we would hope to see is that we have specific asset management plans for specific services. So you get more of a generalized for a specific service or function. Yeah.
And I'd say this, another piece of this is the data accessibility. So they're looking at, this is staff level at this point to help inform all of this. And once they have that picture, then they can put it in layman's terms.
Okay, so just getting into a little bit more of the regional district finance component. So if we go to the next slide, this just, no need to get into each one, but it just kind of shows you what sections of the Local Government Act stipulate certain types of financial matters. So there are parts within the community charter as well, but there's several regulations, and that's why I'm so thankful to have Ms. Legault on our team. To help me with these things. So financial planning and budget process. So we're going to be talking some more about this on the 29th and 30th, but essentially it's mandated under the Local Government Act as it is for the community charter for municipalities. We need to adopt our bylaw by March 31st, where a municipality needs to adopt theirs by May 31st. So why does a regional district go first? Because our information has to lead into their process. So there is a public consultation piece required for local governments. We hold public meetings. We've done open houses. We've done various specific community workshops. There's definitely always an opportunity for more public consultation with the community as it relates to our budget. One of the things we've noticed, though, is when you say budget consultation, there's less interest than when you say it's about a specific item or issue that maybe is near and dear to specific, and that's kind of what we've tried to do with community dialogues is these are the services we provide, this is who we are, this is what we do. So yeah, most certainly always looking for opportunities to do more of this. So financial planning process, of course, so the strategic plan generally is the key guiding document, the board's key guiding document to say what are the priorities. Of course, we're in process of trying to create one of those coming up. So we've got departmental plans, we've got the annual budget and performance monitoring. So what that means is we report in various forms back to the committee or board on financial matters as it relates to services. So whether it be variance reporting on a quarterly basis, specific issues related to a service like a transit operating agreement, that's where those are some of the decisions you have to make along the way. And these aren't just one-shot deals either. They happen all year long. So again, this is just to give you a 5-year financial plan. This can also be found in our annual report. I know it's very small, but it just shows that over the years, our financial plan most certainly is growing. Services are expanding in the regional district. Again, this is where you see the operating surplus deficit, and those look like very large numbers. And however, those are very specific to a function. And those surpluses, too, can be for projects that haven't been funded quite yet either. So it doesn't mean there's $5.7 million sitting as cash for people.
Director Beamish?
Could you explain grants in lieu of taxes?
Grants in lieu of taxes are actually those items where there's agreements. So BC Hydro pays grants in lieu of taxes. So that's a specific, that would be the amount that the regional district receives in lieu of, so that those BC Hydro properties do not pay their surveyor. They pay them through a different mechanism.
Follow-up? Director McMahon.
I just wondered in generally, have we ever divested services, or do we only accumulate them?
In my over 10 years here, I don't believe we've ever divested services. We've maybe divested components of a service.
So sometimes the way it's delivered is a little bit different. We used to have a service that was specific West Howe Sound recreation, and when we brought the new rec facilities on board and had a broader approach to rec facilities, that service was repealed. So there's options.
Director Hiltz next.
I'm coming back to the grants in lieu and how that compares with the tax exemptions. There seems to be a bit of a relationship there, but different.
Okay. Staff?
No, the grants in lieu are very specific. They wouldn't be grants in lieu like permissive tax exemptions at a municipality. So that is not what that line item is in our financial statements. We don't record the permissive exemptions that are granted. So no, those aren't on our financial statements.
Director Theis.
A few questions. One is,
So one of the things that you will see as you go through the financial planning process is sometimes we have projects that are funded through taxation, that in the next year they are not funded through taxation. So again, that's where we're trying to get to a point where we are including our 5-year capital plans in our budget, so we don't have those swings. So that's why you'll see when you actually adopt the budget in 2019, you're probably going to see this is the financial plan as we thought it was going to look like going in. So that's what I'm going to be talking about on the 29th is when you're going into budget, this is what you're going into. Now you're going to be asked to make some decisions. There's various funding decisions. Depending on how those lie will be how those numbers then translate. Does that make sense?
Follow up? Yeah.
The government transfers, why do we have such large government transfers this year?
Government transfers are items that, and these are changes in accounting standards that have recently occurred, and these have things to do with when we receive our gas tax funds, we then have to transfer into that deferred revenue. So we have to take them in as revenue, and then we have to put them off aside to when we're going to use them. So we have to bring them in, and then we have to set them aside. So it's like a flow through.
Okay. And last question, what did we spend $24 million on this year?
So those are budgeted capital expenditures. So that is not what we've spent on. So you'll see that that is the financial plan bylaw. So when we adopted the budget for 2018, we had $23.8 million worth of capital expenditures. So that was one of the items I was talking about earlier, is that you'll see that in 2019, we did not have that many you don't have the prior year's column, but I think we had about $17 million budgeted, and the prior year I think was about 14. We haven't, these are things for the $5.8 million metering project that was on the books, but we also had the Chapman Water Treatment Plant expansion. We still had phase 2 metering in there, and we had several other capital projects in there. So
in the future, these are just not on the books yet, and that's why
that's right. Yeah, yeah.
Director Julius.
Remember municipality debt? All local governments.
Not the Sechelt Indian Government District.
Any other questions?
Could they? Yes, I'm sure they could.
Director Ties, are you okay? Good, thank you. All right, move on.
So this is just a little bit about how taxes are collected here at the regional district. So the BC assessment provides us property values, and this would be the same in municipalities too in some regards, because the assessments have a significant implication to the apportionment of these services. And I'm going to be talking a little bit more about what that means on the 29th. Because I'm going to touch on it just very briefly. When you have 5 people participating in a service, the assessment may change the piece of pie that you share from one year to the next. So you might pay 30% of a service this year. Depending on your assessment, you may pay 32 or you may pay 28. So it's just how you share. So we may collect $1 million for a service and still collect that same $1 million of taxation in the next year, but the amount that you pay will change based on assessments. So again, we're not changing the tax value, but your taxes might go up just based on assessments. Does that make sense?
Director Ties?
The one thing that confuses me about all this is that the assessment is basically done on property values, yet the requisition is done on the services that we provide. So there's a potential for a huge disconnect. And how does that get reconciled?
So it depends on what bylaw you're speaking or what service you're talking about. So in the case of ports, those are apportioned to each service based on a percentage, and then that percentage is divvied out based on the assessment. So it really depends on the service you're talking about. So how do we reconcile that?
Well, basically, isn't there a potential to be a huge discrepancy between what
Actually, we determine how much money the province is going to collect.
Yeah. Our rates. It dictates what the rate's going to be.
And they collect what we tell them to collect.
Yeah.
But isn't the assessment on the property value?
Yes? So if we determine how much we want them to collect, yes. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Yeah, Tina?
Would it be helpful if I provided some more information on that on the 29th? I wasn't going to go into that level of detail, but I can. And another thing that we've also done is we have brought BC Assessment here to provide, we invited all the member municipalities and staff as well to do a presentation. So maybe the CAO and the chair can figure out if we can do that sometime in the future, because it is helpful.
Okay. Director Julius?
So
we
if
don't
you're talking
keep any.
yeah, so if you're talking about the surveyor of taxes, and again, I think I'll include this next week as well. This is helpful because, if you're someone in Area B and you receive your surveyor of tax notice, there's a portion from the regional district. It might be 40-45% of your tax bill. The rest will be other taxing authorities. It'll be school tax, it'll be the rural tax, it'll be BC Assessment, it might be the Municipal Finance Authority, I think policing tax as well, thank you. So there's different pieces of that pie. So it would be the same in a municipality as well. Mm-hmm. It's just that they're the tax collector of those particular items.
Mm-hmm. So for example, if somebody pays their taxes in the District of Sechelt, and a certain portion of that goes to the regional district, District of Sechelt does not keep any of that. Every penny goes to the regional district. Same for the hospital district, right? And all of the others. None stays with the collecting authority. Okay, Director McMahon.
I believe there's been some public education in the last few years on taxes, but it certainly would be helpful for the rural directors to have little infographics and stuff that we can share with people to try and explain this very confusing picture.
Okay.
Yeah.
Any other questions? Thank you. Let's move on.
Okay, so again, this is what we were talking about earlier about how the regional district tax rates are set by the province, and these would be the multipliers. So if we have a rate for taxation of $1.50 per 100,000 of assessment, that's 1 times the rate for a residential class. But for a utility, so that would be the independent power facilities that are throughout the regional district, they would pay 3.5 times that rate. Okay, so again, that's really important to understand that when you're in a service and you have one of those independent powers or one of those light or major industries participating in that service, they do help with the share of the pie. So, in some services, the residential class will take more of the burden. Sometimes the other classes will take a little bit more. But again, that would be same and indicative of the municipality structure as well. So, any questions there?
Doesn't look like it. Yeah, Director Hiltz.
Class multipliers are set by provincial, and are they province-wide for rural areas?
Yes.
Okay. Do they change?
They have not in my time. I don't believe they have.
Okay, thank you.
So regional district borrowing. So a little bit about how long-term debt is done. So they have to be capital in nature to borrow. So you can't borrow for operating expenditures. That's very important to understand. Long-term borrowing by local governments has to be done through the Municipal Finance Authority. We touched on this before. All long-term debt flows through the regional district for a municipality. And long-term borrowing cannot be done without public approval. And Inspector of Municipalities has to approve it as well. So it's a clear and transparent process. So there is sort of three ways that a regional district can borrow. There's long-term debt, as we've touched on. There's short-term, and that would be under 5 years. But again, there's a lot to be evaluated when doing short-term debt. And then there's a loan under agreement. So that might be the context of a long-term agreement with a contractor. So in our case, we have loan under agreements for our landfill contracts. So they might be very expensive. There might be lots of capital content in there for the contractor. And that's an agreement that the regional district is bound to for that term.
Sorry, loans under agreement. Can a municipality go into those as well, or is that unique to regional districts?
I don't know.
I haven't seen it at the municipal level, that's why I'm asking.
Yeah, it's a term that I have seen through the Local Government Act.
Okay. Any other questions? Okay.
So this is, again, a report that's brought to the committee on a quarterly basis as well, which is the long-term debt position of the regional district, including the member municipality debt. So as of the end of 2017, the total long-term debt just for the regional district was $16.9 million. The biggest debt portion there is, as you can see, it's for the recreation facilities, the two new recreation facilities from 2007 and 8. So again, those were 20-year borrowings. So we're at about the halfway point for those.
Okay, move on.
So it just shows you sort of, for just historical purposes, how regional district debt has gone down. We've, over the last few years, have adopted a debt management policy as well, which is board endorsed. So I think this is sort of the last point I've got is regional district reserves. And so understanding that regional district reserves follow the same format as do the service and how those services are provided. They can be for capital nature or they can be for operating. Each reserve actually has a bylaw for it and stipulates what those funds can be used for. And you can go to the next one. So, and these have to be, only the funds within those reserves can be used for that service. So we can't use community recreation reserves for a park. So the same rules apply for the reserve balances as they do for the function themselves. So if you go to the next one, just shows sort of a snapshot of our reserve balances. And again, reserve funds, we have our general funds, so you'll see that those are all our services, so anything from the parks to recreation to our fire services is what's in the general. Water is specific to the water utilities, south, north, and regional water service, and the sewer is for the wastewater facilities. The development cost charges are our DCC funds. And our future parks acquisitions are for funds that are collected through development for parks in lieu and those types of things. So we also provide this detailed information that will be coming up on the 29th.
Any questions? Director Beamish.
Were these reserves shown in that first table you showed us? The financial position, did they show up in there?
They are in the cash or in the investments, in the investment portfolio. Yeah.
Do these represent actual dollars?
There's always timing differences, and that's what the actual specific staff report will show you, is that sometimes there is a timing difference. The last time that report went through was in October. That was the last, but I will bring that duplicated report on the 29th to include it. So when you understand when people are proposing budget proposals to be funded from reserves, that you can see how much are in there. So sometimes based on cash flow requirements, sometimes we'll be underfunded in our investment accounts or we'll be oversubscribed. And what that means is that if we anticipate that someone's going to need a lot of money, we're not going to place it, or we even move the timing of them. So for instance, our landfill closure account, those are invested in longer term investments because we know what phases and when we're going to, estimated when we are going to need those funds, which are longer term than short term.
Director Beamish?
But in terms of the overall investment, it appears to be quite a lot of money, yet our investment in revenue was only $50,000 or so.
We're getting better. We definitely look at lots of, we are very active with our investment portfolio. I know some regional districts who just leave it in their account, in their bank account. So we're very active with targeting when we need funds and what type of portfolio we can do it. So, do we always leave it in the Municipal Finance Authority bond fund? No, we don't, because there might be some different opportunities to earn some more points. I think with the increase, we'll talk a little bit more about market conditions, interest rates, and the impact it has to us next week.
Just final question, if I may. Can we invest any of our funds locally, say, with the community, or not the community foundation?
Sunshine Coast Credit Union?
Credit union or anything else?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. Yes.
Okay. Any other questions? All right. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you.
We'll move on. Well, give the directors a moment to come back to their chairs.
I would need to go pee. Can we have a break? Oh, what happened here?
Staff, we're going to take about a 5-minute break.
Thank you.
Thank you. Going to start. He's on a call outside, we believe. So first, we want to make a motion to accept the previous report by the general manager, etc. First and second, all in favor? Thank you. And then we'll move on to the report. Senior Leadership Team number 3, this is page 17, and this will be led off by our CAO, Jeanette Levies.
Thank you, Director Seegers. So this report is a summary of all of the projects that were approved through the budget process, and they include capital projects. They would include some planning initiatives, but anything that was approved through that budgeting process. And staff bring forward this report every other month so that it gives an update on what has happened. And in the report itself, the sections that are bolded, the intention is to draw attention to action that has happened between the past report and this report. So again, here, in the next time you see this, those sections would not be bolded. You will see this report in a form for next week in terms of our pre-budget as well, and so more opportunity to have a discussion in context to the work that is currently being on the plan in connection to proposed projects that the board would wish to move forward with. So staff are happy to take any questions that the committee might have.
Okay, so this report is presented to us in a number of formats. We actually have it as a PDF in our agenda package. In your folder, it's also provided to you as an Excel spreadsheet. The Excel spreadsheet gives you the opportunity to sort the items by area, so you can look at them and just focus on ones in your area, focus on all of them, etc. One of the things that was pointed out to me is when you do that sort, it actually changes the line number for the item, because the line numbers do not follow the items when you do the sort. So when we actually talk about it at the board table, we're going to talk about it as per the line items as they are in the actual budget package, or in the meeting package. So if you're working with the spreadsheet, you'll need to then go back to the document that's in your package to identify those items so that we can all kind of follow along on the same page. And what we're going to do is we're going to go director by director for your area so that you can identify those items that you'd like more information on. So, Director Hiltz, could you start? Are you ready to go? Or I could start at the other end of the table. Who'd prefer to start? Start with you? Okay, Director Hiltz, over to you. So if you tell us which line item number, then we can all follow along as well in your document. Sure, if you're ready to go. I can go to somebody else if not.
Well, I do have a couple of questions, so I'm just trying to get my right focus here.
Turn your mic on too, please. Thank you. Okay, try and turn your mic on once more.
There we go.
Thank you.
Thanks. A general question. How long do projects stay on? I see there's one from it dates back to 2013. Is kind of.
And what number is that?
Oh boy, now I got to find.
Far left gives you the line number.
Yeah, it was in the spreadsheet.
Line 23, somebody was saying?
23.
Yeah.
If I may.
Yes, go ahead. Turn your mic on too, please.
It's a bicycle and walkway project. I know which one you're speaking of, and we will be talking about that as far as the carry forwards and what staff are recommending for those projects going forward, because it has been there for quite some time, and so yeah, more to come. Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Director.
But if there's a specific question about it, we'll endeavor to answer it.
I think I'm lost again on the groundwater investigation in terms of the status of the testing of the flow testing from. I understand.
And that was line number.
Oh, Jesus again.
Sorry.
Sorry.
It's just that we can all then follow along.
Yes, I'm just got it up here right now. I haven't got it in front of me. Right. Okay, let's try that again.
Do you have the spreadsheet up in front?
That's what I do.
Okay,
yes.
so if you go way to the left on the spreadsheet, it'll give you a line number. So move it all to the right, and we'll have a line number on the left.
I got to find my block again here. I'll just.
Are you looking at an Excel or actually in the document?
I was back and forth.
Okay.
Maybe you should go on, and I'll come back to that.
Okay, we'll come back to you.
I'll come back to my line
Director
numbers.
Beamish, do you have any questions?
No, just, I guess, some explanation detail, but I just, I don't have any right now. I was looking to say line number 25. It just talks about Area E, Gower to Gibson's connection. That's I guess it's service for Area E. I don't have any specific questions this time.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you. Director Lamb. And Director Hiltz and Beamish, could you turn your microphones off, please? Thank you. Director Lamb, any questions? No? Thank you. Okay. Director Hiltz.
Director Ties.
Sorry, Director Ties.
It's all good.
You look different today.
There's a lot of comments regarding anything talking to Moti, and it says it says discussions with Moti resumed since UBCM, and I'm just curious as to what exactly that means.
And line number you're on?
This is anywhere from 25, 26, 27, 28. Actually, maybe not 27, but there's several there. They all say discussions with Moti resumed since UBCM.
This was to do with paths, bike paths, and over to staff.
Thank you, Chair Seeger. So this is an initiative that you're going to hear a lot more about next week, and you're also going to hear more in the new year as well. But it is something that we have been working collaboratively with AVICC and 5 other regional districts, and the concept is, how do regional districts construct bike and path walkways, active transportations in MODI right-of-ways. And this is about the construction standards, the liabilities, the funding mix, the maintenance of those. So it is something that we were working on and had these constructed, and it's been elevated provincially now in terms of other regional districts wanting to do this, and now putting a framework around how this would happen. So some of those projects have been on hold while we have been working on this collaboratively with the other regional districts. And they are Regional District Nanaimo, Comox, Cowichan, and Quoth in Powell River.
Right, so a piece of that is, I believe it was about 3 or 4 years ago. Prior to that, the regional district used gas tax funds to build bike paths. And then it was found that one of the requirements with the gas tax funds was that we actually had to own the land upon which we used the funds to construct anything. And is that something
or at least
that,
control it.
Or control it.
Own
Yeah.
the infrastructure.
Yes,
so
own
the
the
gas
infrastructure.
tax,
That's
own
right.
the infrastructure as per the gas tax,
Right.
and the process. But then there's another step that also is connected very much to that, is that we need to formalize how that tenure happens with the Ministry of Transportation.
Right. So when that came about, we had to stop creating and building the bike paths on Ministry of Transport land. And so all of those negotiations are happening around that now to try and put a process in place where we can continue to use those funds.
And I am the lead on behalf of all the other 5 regional districts in AVICC, so I'm coordinating and working and communicating with everybody.
Okay. Any other questions?
Yeah, and I'm not sure if the answer to that question might end up in an in-camera, but I was surprised to see CAO levies on so many budget items, and I'm wondering if we don't know you enough that you're busy enough answering our annoying questions. And yeah, it was just surprising to me that you're taking on so many operational things. That's all.
Did you want to comment on that?
Nothing specific. I'm not feeling overworked. Everything's good. There might be another reason why something specific is there, but no concerns.
Okay.
Right. Any other questions?
Nope, that's it for me. Thanks.
Director McMahon.
The gas tax situation with MODI, does that also apply to connector trails that are on road allowance?
Yes.
Okay, I had a few that I was wondering what they were in most cases. 25, the Gower to Gibson's path. Do we know what exactly that is?
Staff?
Thank you, Chair Seegers. I believe that construction project is the completion of the shoulder widening project along Gower. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay. 28. Highway 101 maintenance repairs. Why are we repairing Highway 101?
And staff.
Thank you, Chair. So again, this is a historical project that was scoped prior to the situation that we're working through collaboratively with other regional districts and the ministry, and more information on that situation will be brought forward through the budget process as it relates to some of these older projects. Thank you.
And I think the question is, why are we working on Highway 101 rather than, I think you're referring to, Director Hall, you're looking at, it's a path beside Highway 101, or is it on Highway 101 itself? I think is what the clarification is. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So for clarification, this relates to the shoulder of the highway, which was originally constructed by the SCRD.
Okay.
Really? Fascinating. I look forward to more details.
Thank you.
I have many questions, but I think we probably don't want to go into all of them because we'll get to some of them eventually. I notice there's a lot of vehicle replacements, and I wonder if there is a program to replace any of our vehicles with electric vehicles.
Thank you, Chair. So a lot of the vehicles that are being replaced are large trucks, so for parks or utilities with service bodies or cranes. So there doesn't seem to be a market that has electric vehicles that have the required specifications to meet those. But things are changing, so we do review that to see where there's opportunities. There is more work being done with our fleet to try to look at that, to make sure we right size our vehicles, etc. But typically the ones that you'll see here are large duty trucks. So there isn't a electric option currently for that in North America that we're aware of. I know that staff did do some investigation on that. So.
Okay, Director Moran, anything else?
No, I think I'll stop for now.
Okay, thank you. Director Pratt. Not at this time. Okay. Director Julius.
Yes.
Could you use your mic too, please?
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair. Yes, I'm looking at PC, or line number 11.
Signage upgrade.
When it comes to the signs, I see the Seashell Nation as something I didn't know anything about. Can we let me know what's going on with that one item?
To staff.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an exciting project where there has been work at the staff level with the nation recently that comes from an older, I believe it was a council resolution to work together on establishing Seashell language names for some of our parks. And at the staff level, we've recently crossed an important hurdle where we have confirmed names, which we're grateful were supplied through an elders language group. And working with nation staff, we have managed to confirm that we have them laid out on signs mocked up for production correctly, being very careful with lots of attention to detail there. And so we're looking forward to having these produced and rolled out to parks with some supporting communications about the meaning of the names, prepared in preparation with the nation as soon as possible. Thank you.
Okay, so this is on parks.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I thought it might have been something a little bit more because I know we've been in discussions with the provincial government on signs. You know, they have actually come to us and they've like from lakes, even where our boundary is. You know, they were asking if we would like a big sign there. You know, you're entering the Seashell Nation traditional territory, those kinds of things. But I thought that was part of what I was reading here. Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
No, that's good.
Thank you. Director Lee.
I was just wondering where we can get details on these things so we can understand the detail of the project. rather than just the comments on them.
Thank you. Staff?
Maybe if I could comment. So how this particular information comes through, I understand it's a new board. So typically these types of projects get approved ahead of time. So there's detailed budget proposals. So you would have that context. So I appreciate that you're kind of coming in at one phase of the particular reporting part. So that will be some of the benefits of going and approving and some of these falling off, is you'll have the intimate knowledge of the details of what the project is, sort of the business case associated with it. So we could always provide the details on these because we have the past agendas and budget proposals for them. So we could produce that because they're all publicly available. As you can see, some of them do date back a few years, so we would have to work with the specific director as to how much detail, how many agendas they'd like to go back, because it depends when these were approved as well, and sometimes projects come through for approval during the year, so there's budget amendments. So not all projects come through. So most certainly if there's one in particular, we can go back and get the staff report and the business case for that. So this is sort of a tail end reporting mechanism. So the front end detail is provided during those processes.
So what's going to happen is during the budget process, we will determine which projects we want to see move forward. They will then appear on this list with just a summary in the description part on the right. But because we'll have been involved in the discussion, we'll understand more of that and have that detail. Because we've now come in partway through this process, these descriptions would have meant something more to the previous directors sitting here. So if there's something that you want more information on, if you highlight that to staff, they can get you more background information.
So I should ask them if I want.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, identify which ones you'd like more information on. They can provide that information to you.
Good. The reason I'm asking is I kind of like to have the project description so I can go back and see exactly what we were doing and whether we did what we said we were going to do.
Right.
You need both parts. So.
Okay, so the other piece of this document, if you go to the end of the document, you have items that are highlighted in blue. Those are either completed or did not move ahead and were canceled by the board. So we currently have 66 items on the list that are still in process.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Director Beamish.
Yes, just item number 37, and this is Hillside Development Project Investment Attraction Analysis. Is that something that's been done by the staff here, or is that something that Scredo would do? Is that $60,000 in addition to the Scredo budget, or is that how does that work? Because we're all part of Scredo.
Okay, and through to staff.
Thank you, Chair. So this project would be, as it's scoped, is proposed to be led by the Sunshine Coast Regional District, and a component of this is the management of lands, which are owned by the Regional District at Hillside Industrial Park. But the involvement or a partnership with Scredo and other stakeholders would certainly form part of the project. Thank you.
Follow up?
No, wait to see more. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Yes, Director Hiltz.
Okay, 2 line items. Number 4. So that's a 2-part question, I guess. Where is the Zone 2 reservoir for starters, and then what was wrong with the reservoir?
Staff?
Thank you, Chair. Zone 2 reservoir is the reservoir situated at the Chaplin Creek Treatment Plant, which is our which is one of our main reservoirs. The reservoir was built in the 60s, 70s, and it had some, over time, the concrete, it's a concrete tank, had some cracks. So the repairs are related to reducing the leakage from the reservoir and fixing those cracks. Thank you.
And next question?
Line 59.
5-9?
5-9.
Okay.
Just on the timeline, testing of the wells was early October. My general understanding is that the wells are drilled and the pipes are in the ground and the testing is yet to be done. And I'm just wondering about the timeline for the testing.
And staff?
Thank you, Chair. The testing has been done and the data is currently being analyzed, and the report will be forwarded in January for the committee with the final results of the analysis of the information.
Okay. Any other questions by the board? Okay, I have a couple of questions. These are just actually to point out to the board. I'm just going to highlight it here. Number 40. This is about the Chapman Lake supply expansion and indicates that early spring this will be coming to the legislature with a recommendation. And then number 60, long-term debt, and this is with regards to the water meter installation, and we'll get a proposal presented at round 1 of the 2019 budget deliberations. Any other questions on this report? So I'd like a motion to receive the report. Thank you. Director Beamish, Director Pratt, all those in favor? Thank you very much. So we'll move to page 30, the next report, and first I'd like a motion to receive the report. Director Pratt, Director Hiltz, all those in favor? Thank you. Thank you, staff. And we'll turn over to Tina Perreault to explain this report.
Thank you, Chair Seegers. So the report in front of you today is our audit report and planning letter from our auditors who are engaged through contract to perform the financial audit for the Sunshine Coast Regional District, the Sunshine Coast Regional Hospital District, and our Hillside Foreshores. So I understand that, again, I may not have provided as much detail and context in my report as perhaps would have been useful. I just wanted to highlight that the Regional Hospital District, although it's included in this audit planning letter, is a separate corporate entity, and so we won't be addressing or asking for anything related to the hospital district at this time. We'll be doing that at the future meetings in January. For the foreshore leases, so that's a requirement of the province. We have several foreshore leases and an agreement with the province in Hillside. One of the stipulations and terms of that particular agreement with the province is that we do an audit, an independent third-party audit of the fees and charges received by those particular subleases that we have with those entities. And so we submit that information, that gets audited by a third party, in this case BDO, and that information is submitted to the province. So that's what the foreshore lease is all about. It's a very small piece of this particular work and takes very little time. It's just really a review of a few spreadsheets, verification of funds transferred in some of the agreements. So if there's any renewal of some of those subleases, those do come to the committee for consideration. So as far as the rest of the information, so in the audit planning letter, it's very detailed, and this is a requirement legislatively for us to conduct a financial audit. It's important to understand that this audit is not a performance audit of the regional district. I know that that has been a question in the past. So performance audits would be things that you would see with the Auditor General of local governments, where they go in and analyze a specific component of a specific local government. So whether it be procurement practices, capital planning processes, Those types of things are things that the Auditor General has done in the past, and all that information is available. This here is one of the fiduciary responsibilities of the regional district boards, is to understand the risks, the financial risks. So this is where they explain some of the risk models that they look at. So cash would be one where they would look at areas where there's typically fraud or theft. They would focus on those specific areas. So it's not the same each year. It'll be different. And we actually are just concluding our interim audit with our auditors this week. So they're here on site. So included in here, it just explains to the board what they will be reviewing, how they will be going about analyzing the information. And it's also an opportunity for the committee to communicate with our external auditors through this particular content. So if there's anything that the board would like the auditors to look at, this is where the committee would make a recommendation. We do advise that if there's anything specific to contract-related matters or those types of things, that they're addressed in camera. But again, this is where if the committee wanted to provide some feedback to our auditors, that would be relayed to them in this particular format. So I will take any questions if there are any.
Director Beamish.
Sure.
Could you speak to the paragraph 3 under materiality, just for the board's information?
And what page are you on?
That's page 35.
Okay, just a second till we all get there.
So typically this is a calculation done at the beginning of the audit, and this is where our financial position is what stipulates what the materiality would be. So this is things where if they identify our items of accounts receivable that they find we haven't recorded deferred revenue. If it's $10,000, it's not material enough to report. It doesn't mean that we won't report on it, but it doesn't mean that we have to then modify or restate in our financial statements. It would have to be in the amount of $890,000, where they would mandate us to restate our financial statements. Any discrepancy that they do identify is reported back to the board. The materiality is based on our cash and cash equivalents and those types of things.
So $500,000 wouldn't require a restatement? Just
it wouldn't require us to, but we have in the past done it, though. And where we have typically done that is when local governments were mandated back in 2009 to state all our tangible capital assets. Through the years, and we're actually still finding this, where we didn't know we owned something, and we find out that our tangible capital assets have changed, and we have restated our financials. So you'll see in our annual report, you'll see values where it says restated. And when you have to restate financials, you have to go right back to when that particular item was done. So that's what it means from a restatement. It's a choice. We tend to trend towards the conservative. So if it would be $500,000, we would most likely restate. If it was $10,000 or $20,000, most likely not, but we just notate it.
Okay. Any other questions? Director Hills.
So in layperson's term, is that like a margin of error? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
Yes.
Okay.
And you'll note in the two different corporations, the materiality is different because it depends on the size of the budget. And you'll see that different in our municipality as well. It's different. Okay, I'd like to go to page 52. Or 54, sorry. I have a question on 54. Sorry, no, it is page 52. It's numbering's wrong. Sorry. It says 54 in my comments, but it's actually 52 because of the numbering. These are some of the changes that are made, and the one that I was asking about is the last bullet point on page 52, where it talks about solid waste landfill closure and post-closure liability has been withdrawn. So how is that going to impact our financial statements? Because I know we have an unfunded liability right now for our solid waste landfill? Yes.
So this section, Public Sector Accounting Standard 3280 is a new standard being contemplated through the Public Sector Accounting Board, which has been endorsed and approved. Last year it was just through the review phase, so the white paper had just been presented. So we were highlighting it to our board that these are things to come. Now that it's being approved as a new accounting standard, we have to the prior board brought to them what the new regulation meant. And essentially what this means for the regional district is that we are going to start to have to contemplate recording for future decommissioning of assets in the future. We currently are only mandated to do that mostly for our landfill. So with the new accounting standard, we won't have two separate standards. The landfill liability will now become part of the asset retirement obligation. It won't be landfill closure and post-closure obligations. It'll be combined.
Okay.
So what this also means is decommissioning of facilities. If we know that we're going to close a facility at a specific time, and we know that that particular facility has a lot of asbestos, we then have to record what the future financial obligation will be to the regional district in the future. And we may have to contemplate how we're going to fund that. So in the case of the landfill, we have an unfunded liability, meaning we do not have enough financial assets to cover our future financial liabilities for the closure and post-closure. So last year, we brought some reports to the board about the life cycle of our landfill. They made a decision to increase the post-closure investment to $125,000 for the next few years. So this year, you'll see that that's one of the more material impacts to the budget, because we are contributing an additional $125,000 towards the landfill closure to try to close that unfunded gap.
Okay. Director Hiltz, you had a question? Your microphone's on. Thank you. Okay. Let's look at the prior year observations. So starting on page 62. Sorry, this is current year observations, which would be last year, right? Because this is a report from last year. I noticed observation number 2, system user access rights. Just wondering if that's been dealt with?
Yes.
Thank you. And there was number 3, talks about joint use agreement with the school district and how we actually would be recording that, given that there's actually no exchange in fees. Could you explain that, please?
That has been changed, and you'll see some more information on that through budget.
Okay.
If I may, Chair, these particular items too, that when they came through to our audit in April, staff had already worked on addressing them. Mm-hmm. So we wrote a report about how we were mitigating these items. So by April, when the final statements were issued, some of these had already been mitigated. So in the case of the joint use, when the budget was adopted, we had already started to implement this.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Oh, question, Director Beamish?
Just on the item 4 on page 63, the code of conduct for our board members and senior management, that has been done. And have we got a copy of that? Is that coming?
Staff?
Sorry.
Thank you, Chair. So this is a future report that the board would need to consider. It is a best practice now in BC, given past experiences in other local governments, and so we'll see a future report.
Okay, Director Hiltz, you had a question?
Same paragraph. Just what are disaggregated policies?
Staff?
There are policies that may conflict with one another.
Any other questions? Okay, so if we go back to page 30, there is a recommendation with regards to the audit planning communication. And I'd look for someone to make that recommendation. Director Pratt. Second, Director Tighe, sorry, I'll get it right yet. All those in favor? Thank you very much. We'll move to the next report. So Annex D on page 67. And I'd like a motion to receive this report. Director Tighe. Second, Director Beamish. All those in favor? Thank you. And we'll look to staff to review this.
Thank you, Chair. So this is an opportunity to provide an overview of the budgeting process. As we're headed into next week, we've been referring to it a lot. And so this just shows the various steps that we take for our budgeting process. This has evolved through the years. And of course, one of the items that we always do at the end of our budgeting process is to have an opportunity to review a debrief, what worked well, what didn't work well, what process improvements that we can make. So, and then we implement that into the next year. So, of course, understanding that this is this particular board's first go, then we'll have an opportunity to go and review this particular current process, which I'd say over the years has streamlined probably since your time, Chair. And so the steps right now are, first, we have the pre-budget meetings, and really the purpose of that meeting is to receive all the information. In the past, that would happen in the first round of budget. And in the first round of budget, it was generally people were making decisions about some of those. So some of the feedback was, look, we want an opportunity to receive the information both internally from regional district services and also externally through our community groups to have a better understanding as to what the asks are. And it's just for information, it's not for decision making, but the decisions will be, do you want to see more information related to those proposed initiatives coming forward? So if you don't, then you don't see the more fulsome business case or budget proposal come forward in January in round one. So that's upcoming next week, so you're going to be receiving some more information tomorrow. The budget stakeholders, so that's the November 30th, and again, stakeholders are not here to present those particular budgets. They're given that opportunity in the first round, but it is an opportunity to provide some feedback to those community stakeholders and say, look, we'd like to see some more on this, and so it gives them an opportunity to prepare that information in advance of the round one budget. Then we also have the public consultations. So this comes in various forms. Of course, the meetings are public. We have presentations that we do to member municipalities and to community groups. We do a video and do a call-in through Coast Cable. But again, talking earlier, there's always opportunities to do some more public consultation, whether it be through open houses, etc. So round one deliberations is then when we receive the more fulsome budget proposals. That's sort of your business cases, what financial implication is going to be now and in the future, what staffing implications are going to be there, and what funding implications those have. So those are happening in the third week of January. Round two deliberations happen in the first week of March, and the reason why they happen in the first week of March is so February committee meetings is when you, the board and committees, we have several committees, whether it be planning, infrastructure, corporate services, that if you want to do a deeper dive into some of those budget proposals that you received in January, that there's an opportunity in that middle zone to provide some larger context reports, and that has happened. So last year, for instance, with our IT requests, there was very fulsome asset management plans provided at the February corporate services, which then really gave the background as to why we're asking for more resources. So that would be an example last year where we did that. And then adoption of the budget is supposed to be done by March 31st. I did want to highlight that when this particular calendar was first set back earlier in 2018, one of the dates have changed, so I apologize for that. Budget adoption is going to be happening on the 28th and not on the 21st, so just notate that change. It's already in your calendars, but I would like to just point out that change. So that's when the final bylaw comes to the board for adoption. So at all those particular stages, we will be providing you tax by area information, impacts on user rates, and parcel taxes will be coming in January as well. So we're going to be providing some more information next week as to when you can see some different information. So I'll take any questions if there are any.
Questions? Director Beamish?
Chair, on November the 30th, some of us are actually going to be away that day. Now, my alternate is also not available that day. Should somebody else come, or how critical is that day to discussion?
Staff?
So the type of material, I'll tell you maybe what type of material, and you know, it's up to yourselves to make the decision. You'll be receiving the information ahead of time, so it's not a decision-making opportunity. It's an information receiving. And also, if there is further information that you would like to see and give that direction, that would be what we would need communicated on the 30th. So we could communicate that back to the various community groups. So the types of information that you're going to be seeing is what we call our community partners and stakeholders. And this is not the grant and aid process. So it's important to understand that who you will be seeing and those budgets are our community schools, our museums, the libraries, because we provide service grants to them, our chambers, some of the chambers from the economic development side of the house. So those are some of the groups that you'll be seeing, is because sorry? Yeah, so we also have a day for them in January to come in the round one, where then they can present their budgets if they so wish to. Some of them don't choose to be a delegation. They may be in the audience to ask questions, but you'll see the information again, maybe revised in January.
So there will be three of us not here that meeting, and our alternates or somebody would be in attendance. Do you need to know ahead of time to ensure they have the agenda package? Because we have it electronically, they would need it hard copy.
Yes, please. Let staff know so we can ensure that everybody has the appropriate information required.
Okay, and then how would
be electronically?
We can talk about how they get that later.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. Again, the information will be posted to the website. But if there's anything additional, We'd like to make sure everybody have what they need.
Okay. Any other questions on this report, Director Moran?
Yes, I was just wondering if there is any periodic outreach with groups who may have local services, like the Sunnyside group who, 11 properties are on one sewage treatment plant. Are we ever in touch with them to...
Staff? I think in touch with them for what purpose?
Well, I suspect that a lot of people don't even realize they're on this service.
Oh, okay.
Because it's been there for so long. And, not many people read their tax bill in extreme detail.
Okay. Okay. Staff?
So do we engage with so what we do, okay, we do include in their rural tax notice what they participate in. So do we engage each specific community group individually? Not unless there's a need to. But we do have open houses, etc. So if people were curious or wanted more information, of course, we get phone calls all the time. As it relates to the wastewater facilities, though, that's going to be an independent process. So we will be speaking to that community group in the new year. So we've already started to map out what that public engagement framework is going to look like for our wastewater facilities. Some have community groups, so whether it be Sunnyside or if it's just sort of geographical area. We're going to have to navigate that because that's very specific. Yeah.
Okay, any other questions? Thank you. Okay, we'll move to the next report, Appendix E on page 71. And I'll look for a motion to receive the report. Director Julius, Director Ties, all those in favor? Thank you. And over to staff for a brief explanation.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So this is required under the delegation bylaw is to provide information on contracts that fall between 50 and 100,000. The ones that fall over 100,000 come to the board for decision. So this is just to provide you information on a quarterly basis for contracts awarded between that frame. So we can answer any questions if there are any.
Any questions by the directors? Director Hiltz.
Number one, YMCA, I'm not familiar with this aspect at all, really. So,
staff?
So this is an operational agreement for our recreational programming, so our function 670, and this is to provide youth and child programs for this particular term. And these are past operational contracts that have been in the past. So if you'd like more information on some of the programs offered, then we can perhaps provide that at a future time. Sometimes that information comes through quarterly reports through the functions.
Okay. Any other questions? Next report, Annex F, page 73. First, a motion to receive the report. Thank you. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you. And again, over to staff.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the purpose of this report is because annually our insurance for both liability and property come forward for review. And so a significant review is done of the regional district assets as well. I would like to highlight, though, that in the recommendation, we apologize. We can't go back in time and adopt this on November 15th. It's to go forward to the board later today. So that would be the 22nd. My apologies. So we currently have our annual insurance through the Municipal Insurance Association, MIA. We are a participant of that particular insurance body, and you'll be hearing more about the municipal insurance, I'm sure, at your various conferences that you'll be going to. And this is for our liability, et cetera, for claims. And we also have our property insurance and liability and those types of things through Aon as well. So these, again, are reviewed on an annual basis. So the premiums have gone up a little bit this year because our property values have gone up as well. So this is, again, an example of where the invoice is over 100,000, and per delegation, this has to come to committee and board for approval.
Okay, I have a question on the bottom of page 73. I think there's a typo, but I'm not sure. It talks about annual estimated assessment of 80,000, and it says there was an increase in the annual cost. 2018 premiums were 73,000. Should that be 2017? Were 73,000? Or am I reading this wrong?
So actually, the assessment, it should be for 2019. You're correct.
Okay.
So last year our premiums were 73,000 in 2018. So that'll end at the end of December 31st. And then in 2019 they're estimated for 80. Now there's still some fine tuning going on, so that's why the values are a little bit different. It's an up to amount because again there's a little bit of back and forth that goes with the insurance companies till the first week of December. But we want to make sure that we can execute the contract before the term ends, so we're fully covered.
Question?
Just another typo. It says, third paragraph, the SCRD is chosen to insure liability insurance form, MIA, and property insurance for Aon. I think it needs fixing.
Thank you. Any other questions on this report? Director Beamish.
Just that at some point, will we receive a briefing on insurance claims for 2018, just so we understand the nature of the claims?
Staff?
That is provided on a biannual basis to the board. If there's anything more serious, of course, we bring that immediately. That information is provided in camera.
Okay, so we have a recommendation to, sorry, question, Director Hiltz, sorry.
In the discussion, it says SCRD's community's population. Is that an estimate, or is that like the 2016 census, or?
Staff?
They use the 2016 census, but then they do use the provincial's escalator, which I think is about 1.5%.
Follow-up?
So does that become our official population? No.
No, the census is the official.
An interim population? Do we cite that figure anywhere?
No.
No. Okay.
Any other questions? Okay, so there are 4 parts to this recommendation. I'm going to point you to the third part of it. It talks about the 2019 to 22 financial plan be amended to reflect the changes in premiums. So we saw the 5-year financial plan up on the wall. This actually is telling us that because we've changed some of our numbers, we actually have to amend that 5-year financial plan as well. So that's a piece of this. Okay, so I'd like someone to make this recommendation of all 4 parts.
Move the recommendations.
Thank you. Second?
With the amendment to November 15th date.
To November 22nd? Is that correct? Okay. All those in favor? Thank you. Annex G, page 75. First, a motion to receive the report. Thank you. First, moved and seconded. Thank you. All those in favor? Thank you very much. And over to staff.
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the reason why this is in front of the committee today is that part of the process for funding debt is that a recommendation needs to be provided to the Municipal Finance Authority in order to execute the debt. So this particular project was approved as part of the 2017 financial plan and was completed this year. And this particular project was budgeted for $125,000, and that was based on engineering consultants back in 2015. So that's where those estimates came from. We came significantly under budget, and part of that reason is because we used some internal resources to do some of the project management and engineering. So again, as a result of that, we are saying that the debt is not required, and that what we're saying is that we not execute the capital financing that was approved in the budget. However, we would like to then fund the $14,000 from capital reserves of the function. So this is a good news story. So again, it's a change in how we're funding this particular project, which is required.
Okay, any questions on this? Director Beamish?
Sorry, no question. I was going to move the recommendations, Madam Chair.
Okay, second? Okay, and I'm just going to indicate voting on this is areas E, F, and Town of Gibson's only. Director Hiltz.
It was a question. Amazing 50% reduction in cost. The asset management coordinator I saw in the budget was a temporary position. So does that continue to be a temporary position?
May I suggest we discuss that during budget?
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other questions? Director McMahon.
I just had a comment because I happened to be at the library last night, and I was talking to the library director, and she just said she was so happy with how her working relationship with Tina and how well it's been going and how helpful the SCRD has been with their asset management program.
All right, thank you. Any other questions, comments? Director Julius.
Yes, just wondering, it says the District Public Library. We're talking about the one in Seashell?
Gibson's and District Public Library.
Okay.
Okay. Any other questions? So we have a motion on the floor. Voting is areas E, F, and Town of Gibson's only. All those in favor? Thank you very much. Move to Appendix H, page 77. First, a motion to receive the report. And this is all voting, so I'd like somebody to move this recommendation. First, moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you. And again, we'll turn over to staff.
Thank you, Chair. So this would be a requirement of, again, Municipal Finance Authority, where we would like to execute short-term borrowing for our information technology equipment, and this is an annual budgeted amount, which you'll see some more information in budget. We have currently $150,000 worth of capital expenditures, whereas last year the board approved an increase of about $50,000 incrementally. It was found that there was almost a $500,000 shortfall in that particular service from that deferred infrastructure type of thing. So we've chosen to do a blend of how we fund it. Some through support services, which we'll talk more about what that means next week, as well as $70,000 for debt. So it's over a 3-year term, and the reason why we pick a 3-year term versus a 5-year term is because, as we know, information technology has a large obsolescence attached to it. So this is to execute this particular portion of the debt funding.
Any questions by the board? I had one question. I'm wondering about timing. So, I mean, we're just starting to go into budget. So why is this coming now and not waiting for a budget?
So this has to do with, so it's a timing issue. So for 2018 budget, we had an authorization to fund $70,000 worth of borrowing. So we don't make the motion until we execute the debt. So this is for 2018 debt, not for future debt.
Okay, so this was actually already in the budget.
Correct.
We're just passing the motion to
Correct.
allow staff to proceed with the borrowing.
Yes.
Thank you.
And this is a requirement where we have to provide this particular recommendation to the Municipal Finance Authority in order for them to execute the debt.
Thank you very much. Any other questions? So I'd like a motion to move this second recommendation. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you very much. Annex I, page 79. And this is a report. This is a follow-up to what we looked at earlier, and I think this was going to address Director Beamish's question regarding reserves. So a motion to receive the report. Moved and seconded. All in favor? Thank you very much. Over to staff.
Yes, thank you. So this provides some more detailed information, and really where you find more of the information is about, okay, where do we place the funds? Again, we have multiple, they change from month to month as far as what the portfolio is. But more importantly, on page 81 to 83, it provides the amounts of funds available in those particular operating and capital reserves, as well as our development cost charge. It also provides you with where the Sechelt landfill, the landfill closure funds are at, as well as our development cost charges as well. So we also place our gas tax funds in, because again, included in this agenda, you'll see where some money has not been spent, so we do invest those funds as well. So I'll take any questions, Chair.
Any questions? Director Mahan.
Yes, it says that funds must be invested in a socially responsible manner. This is probably a big question, but what is a socially responsible manner?
Staff?
So this was one of the items that was included in our investment policy back, I think, in 2015 or 14 it was adopted. And at that particular time, there was a lot of discussion of socially responsible investments. Now, there aren't many available. The Municipal Finance Authority last year tried to get a sociable, responsible one together, but they couldn't quite get it launched. There wasn't enough commitment from provincial, other local governments in the province to get that together. They needed, I think, a pot of about $70 million, so they could only get. I was actually asked as be part of that task force because we were the ones who actually had this directly linked to our investment policy. So it's still in the works. They're still trying to get it together. But it really means local. There's not anything specifically tied to it. we do hold a lot of money in our local organizations here. However, one of the things that I do want to point out is that our auditors do say that we should not hold all our funds in one basket. That is a significant risk to any portfolio. So we try to put about 25% in one particular holding. So we're cognizant of that, but we tend to maximize as much as we can with our local partners.
Sorry, Director Ties?
Yeah, I just wanted to, maybe you could give me a brief explanation on how the interest that is accrued through those investments gets reallocated.
Staff?
So if we have, it's basically dollar for dollar. If we earn 1% on something and you have $100,000, you get 1% share of whatever we make. So it's split that detailed.
Yeah, I'm just wondering where that income then goes back into. Does that go back into the fund that was invested, or does it? Is there like a interest fund that we can just play with, or that kind of thing? So,
staff. I think that's what you're thinking, but anyway.
I know. I'm being.
Those funds we generally reinvest. So principal and interest is reinvested, depending on what the cash requirement needs are. So each particular reserve fund, though, does not have its own account. We pool the accounts and then we reallocate it. I mean, those are some of the joys of a regional district accounting mechanism. We have very large spreadsheets that probably cover walls. So the one particular investment pool will be reinvested depending on the term. It's more the term.
So at some point we'll reap the benefits of it, though, and then
depending on what the needs are. So one of the things I do want to highlight is we don't really have a reserve policy. So that's where the ones we need to do some more work on as it relates to the asset management policy. Because really what we need to do, and I'm going to use the regional water plan as a really good example, where, what is the sufficient amount of reserves that we need in a particular function? We need to make some of those decisions. Right now we have some funds in there, but in some instances we really have a shortfall. If you look at all the asset replacements needs, is $5 million sufficient when you have $200 million worth of assets? Probably not. So again, ports would be another example where in the past boards said, look, we're not going to go below $300,000 in our reserve, but other boards have made decisions where they've been strapped for cash and they've gone below that. So what are we going to do to make that area financially sustainable? We do have a policy which is called our financial sustainability policy, so we'll be sharing some more of that next week as well.
Thanks.
So follow up on that piece. Given all of the reserves we have, would you look at something like a percentage of capital or percentage of operating or some kind, rather than having to have a policy for each one?
I think that's a great methodology to take. I think that's mostly what regional districts have done, because of course to do the other takes a lot of work and time, and so to do a general policy would be a great first step.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Director McMahon.
A few of these funds are not very active. Like an example would be the Roberts Creek Smoke Control Enforcement Fund, which was set up years ago and has proven not really to be necessary. So do these kind of get collapsed after a while, like?
Staff?
Yeah, some of these funds are used where services have produced operational surpluses. So we are using some of those as what we call rate stabilization accounts, meaning where we use some of those funds to stabilize the taxation. And that would be an example of a service where we've done that.
Any other questions? Our final report.
If I may, I maybe have an answer. We don't generally collapse the bylaws. That's not typically something we do.
Okay, sorry. Last report, Annex J on page 85. And I think this one's probably going to have a few questions. First, a motion to receive the report, and this is electoral areas only voting on this. So moved and seconded. All those in favor? Thank you. And over to Tina.
So this particular report is really just a report on the funding of the gas tax funds. So it's important to understand that we have other grants through gas tax that we've received, either through the Strategic Priorities Funds for our asset management work. This is for the Community Works Fund specifically. And how these funds are received is through an agreement through the federal government. UBCM, the Union of BC Municipalities, administers these funds, and it's apportioned to the regional districts based on population. So this is a per capita basis allocation from the federal government. And so the funds are apportioned to each area based on that amount. Funds are received twice a year. And so we do invest those particular funds. Currently on the last page of the agenda, you'll see that the projects that are currently being funded by these particular funds, the funds at the start of the year, project commitments, and what we expect to receive in the future year. So we're providing this information to, just as we lead into budget, where are some of the sources and uses of funds coming from? Where could we fund some projects?
I can see one piece that the electoral area directors may want to know is what can they use these funds for?
Yeah.
To staff?
Thank you, Chair. So it was in 2016, I believe, that staff had brought forward some policy work. So just and similar to when we talked about the reserves, this would be another good example where there could be an opportunity to put some policy framework around this. And so within that, there are things that the funds can be used for that we certainly will be highlighting when we move into the budget process. And there might be other opportunities that the board could consider in terms of how to use those funds collaboratively, as when there are perhaps regional interest projects or things like that. So we've been doing it more on a project base, if you will, versus through policy work. And lots of regional districts are moving that way. It sort of gives lots of flexibility but opportunity to look at how you use the funds.
Right. I think I'm looking at more generic at this point.
Yeah.
So because there probably is not much of an understanding here about what gas tax funds are.
Yeah.
What can they use them for?
Exactly.
What can't they use them for?
Exactly.
So you just put the guidance around that so that they can actually start thinking about that even before budget.
Sure, absolutely.
Okay. Any other questions by directors? Director McMahon.
It's just a follow-up on your question. Is there a document somewhere that outlines, say, the federal policy on what gas tax funds are supposed to be used for that we can just get on our surface?
Staff?
So what we could provide is we could provide you with the federal agreement, which is between the federal government and the UBCM. There's also a UBCM policy between ourselves and the province, or with UBCM, between us and UBCM. So we can provide all of that. We've provided past reports on that because a few years back there was a change to how the funds were done, and there was a change in the agreement. So the SCRD signed a revised agreement with UBCM. So we can provide all that background in your arrow folders.
Perfect. Yeah. Any other questions? Director Hiltz.
Just a little bit of difference between municipalities and regional districts in terms of the gas taxes. How does it apply to municipalities? Is just as the members of the SCRD?
They receive their own gas tax. So how they administer those, I'm not sure, but they do receive gas tax funds as well. How gas tax funds are allocated, I think will become clear once you receive the provincial report, because there's different tiers depending on your size of community, etc. So, yeah.
Right. So in the municipality, we get gas tax funds, but because we're not split into different areas, it's all in one pool. We're still subject to the same rules around spending, but in the regional district, then it's divided up by per capita. Yeah. Okay. Any other questions? Thank you. Any other items that we need to cover that came up this morning? Perfect. Motion to adjourn. Thank you. Thank you. All in favor? Yes. And any questions by media? Thank you very much.
Make a comment, Madam Chair, and that is, there should be no assumption that we know all this stuff. There's a lot of stuff, especially on that big spreadsheet today, and we will be asking lots of questions, I'm sure, going forward. There's a lot of things there. But